Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. The patterns created by the lighting and staging form a large part of the composition in this image. The techniques involved in making this image are not complex, and the whole thing can be done completely in camera. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Right, so to start with, I've just got a bit of space here, and in here I'm going to set up a couple of trestles. There we are. Now I've placed these like this so that I can make myself a glass table and then light the image from below. So for the glass I'm just using a couple of old shelves from a cupboard, and I'm just going to place these across the trestles like this. And you should be able to notice that I've left a small gap here in between the two glass shelves. And the reason for that will become apparent a little later. Right, so with this bit set, although it's all very early on, what I'm going to do is actually set a light. So this is the flash that I'll be using, and it's just a small head, just with a small power pack here, but you can just as easily use a flash gun or speedlight. You don't need a great deal of energy for this. So I'm just going to place this underneath the table. There we are. So that's now in position, or something like position. And I've placed it on that retort stand to just get it low enough. So if it was a flash gun or something similar, you could just use a very small stand just to bring it up to just below the glass level, like we've got here. So the next thing to do would be to cover the table here with some diffusion material. So here I have a roll of 216 diffusion material, and basically I'm just going to roll this out across the top of the table like this. Now, I don't know whether you can make out that I've actually got a hole in the center here. And again, the reason for that will become obvious in a short while. So this is our light table more or less complete. Now, just to finish it off and to complete the look, I'm just going to place this piece of perforated aluminium over the top of it, like so. Okay, so with that all in place, it's time to move on to the actual incandescent lights. Now what I've done here is I've got some incandescent lights which I can run on low voltage, and what I've done is soldered a couple of pieces of cable onto the connector here. So what I can do now is just arrange these on the table like this, and thread the cables through the hole that I made earlier. And by threading it through this way, the actual cables themselves should be hidden by the base of the light. There we are. So now they're all in position, and hopefully from the camera's point of view you shouldn't be able to see the cables. Right, so the next thing to do would be to set up the camera position. So I'm just going to place a tripod out the front here. Now you will need a tripod for this because the position of the camera is critical. You've got to get it in just the right place. So doing this on a tripod gives you an awful lot of control and a bit of repeatability. Okay, so I'm going to use this medium format camera, but you can use virtually any camera for this type of photography. I'm using this because it's more or less generic. And by using this, I can make it easy for you to apply the techniques that I show to your own camera system. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this on the top of the tripod here, like that. Now the camera will be tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to follow along and see the results as I get them. So I'll just set all that up. So there we go, all the cables are in. I'll just turn the camera on. And you can see that the software has recognized the camera, and these are the settings that I have on the camera at the moment. So it's in full manual mode. I have a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second. Now that's the flash sync speed for this particular camera. Your cameras will vary, but the idea is to use the fastest shutter speed that will synchronize properly with the flash that you're using. Okay, I have a sensitivity of 100 ISO, and at the moment I have an aperture set of f8. Now that's probably going to change, but it's a good starting point midway. Right, so with all those things done, the next thing to do would be just to line up the shot. So looking through the viewfinder, what I'll do is just move that up slightly so that the center of the frame is on the back of the lights, and I'll just press the autofocus button on the back of the camera here just to get a rough focus. With that done, I'll just lower that down in the frame a little. There, I think somewhere around there should do. Okay, so with all that now set, and by using the back button focus here, I've been able to get a rough idea of the focus and yet still leave the lens in a manual control. That way it's not going to drift at all throughout the rest of the shoot. Right, so with all that set, next thing to do would be to just take a picture without a flash, just to see what contamination I get from the house lights. There you are, you can see that at these settings I'm actually getting some highlights on the glass here and a few other bits and bobs. So when we come to do the proper image, for a number of reasons it will be necessary to turn the house lights out. But I'll leave them on for the time being so we can see what's going on. Okay, so the next thing to do would be to set the flash. So I can just go into the flash control here and just turn that on. And at an arbitrary energy level, I'm just going to grab an image and see what we get. Okay, so we can see from here that we're getting a reasonable exposure, but the spread of the light at the bottom here seems to be far too big. So what I need to do is concentrate that light so that it's just affecting this area. Now the easiest way to do that is just to add a zoom reflector, which is just one of these. Now if you're using a speedlight, most speedlights will have a zoom control on them. So you can actually alter the angle that the light is emanating from the end of the flash. So I'll just pop this on the flash here, and with that in place, we'll grab another image and see what we get this time. Okay, so we can see in this capture that the light has been more concentrated. It's a little off to one side, and it's also increased the efficiency, so this is a little bright. What I'm going to do is just take maybe a stop off that. So let's do all that. So I'll just take a stop off the light, and I can do that from the control on the top of the camera here. So I'll just go into the flash sync trigger, and with that light selected, I'll just take a stop off it. So with that done and the light adjusted, I'll grab another image. Okay, so we're starting to get there. This is still possibly a little bright. It's much better being in the middle. This is where we had it before, over to one side, and this is where we've got it now. But I think overall, the light itself needs to be moved backwards. So I'm just going to adjust that so that I'm moving it ever so slightly back a bit. And I think that will center better on the lights themselves. Having adjusted that, I've actually moved it back about 100 millimeters. We'll just grab that again and see what it looks like now. Okay, so yeah, I think that's a bit of an improvement, but I think it could do to go a little bit further back. So I'll just move it another 100 millimeters back, and we'll take another picture and see where we get to now. Yes, I think that's got it now. So this is what we started with. Then I moved it back a little bit, And now I've moved it back a bit more. So this is about it, I think, as far as the lighting is concerned. So the next thing I'd like to do is just have a look at the focus. So to do that, I'm just going to use live view. Now, people that have mirrorless cameras can use the live view, which is on the back of the camera. Since this is tethered, I can use the live view through Capture One. So let me just start that up. Okay, so I'm going to initially just have a look at the very back of the lights here. So I'll just zoom all the way into 100%. And you can see that they are a little soft. The focus point is actually behind them. So if I just bring the focus point a bit further forwards, like so, there we are. Okay. But one of the other things that has shown is that the depth of field isn't very big. So I could do with a bigger depth of field. So what I'm going to do is change the aperture from f8 to f16, like so. Now that's going to give me a bigger depth of field, so I can just check that with the live view. Once again, I'll zoom all the way in. And yes, moving along the perforations here, you can see that the depth of field is actually quite a lot larger than it was before. If I go on to the filament, that's all in focus. And the back of the lamps seem to be in focus as well. Okay, so let's just dispense with the live view, and obviously that's a 2-stop change from f8 to f16, so I'll need to add 2 stops of energy to keep everything the same. So I'll just do that now, and we'll just grab that again. There, that appears to be a vast improvement. So this is what we had before, and this is what we've got now. So it's much, much crisper. Again, if I just zoom in, we can check the focus at the back, which all looks pretty good. And as we move further forwards, yep, we can see that the focus is good here too. Okay. I think it could actually just do with a tiny bit more flash, so I'm just going to add half a stop just to see what difference it makes. There we go. Yes, that's lifted it up quite nicely, I think. So this is where we started from, and this is where we are now. So those little changes have made a huge difference to the outcome of the final image. Although this isn't quite the final image, there is something missing. And of course the bit that's missing is the glow of the filaments. So in order to make those filaments glow, what I've done is I've added a small DC power supply, and that is why I push the cables through the base of the table here. By supplying those from this, you could use just a 12-volt battery. You'd have the same effect. I just happen to have one of these. So this is all perfectly safe because this is just a very low voltage, but it does mean that the glow that I'm getting is very dim. So to record that, what I'm going to do is change the shutter speed on the camera. So instead of it being 125th of a second, let's make that maybe, let's start with 1 second. Now obviously there's a bit of guesswork involved in this, and every time that I take a picture now, I'm going to need to turn the house lights out. So using Capture One to trigger the camera, so I don't disturb anything at all, I'll just grab that image. Okay, so at 1 second, I'm starting to get a very small amount of glow in there. So I'm going to need to increase that exposure by quite a long way. So obviously, each time that I double this, that gives me another stop. So 2 seconds would be 1 stop, 4 seconds would be 2 stops, 8 seconds would be 3 stops, and 16 seconds would be 4 stops. But we haven't got an option for 16, so I'm going to go with 20. So this exposure will be exactly the same aperture, but at 20 seconds. So let's turn the house lights out and give that a go. So once again I can trigger it from the Capture One software. So the flash was at the beginning of the exposure, and that's the end of the exposure. So there we go, that seems to have worked very well. So now we've got the filaments glowing and we've got the rest of the exposure as it was before. Okay, so there we have it. Like I said at the beginning of the video, you don't need to go into Photoshop or do any post-production. This is all captured in camera. So just one exposure for the whole thing. And I think that's worked reasonably well. Okay, well I hope you enjoyed watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.